There are only three things I trust in this life. The money, my Mastiff, and my autogun.
Sometimes you just want to shoot something in the face, or the torso, or the arms, or anywhere else. You get what I mean, don't you? Depending on what you really want to do, shooters are like that cool cousin you don't mind hanging out with occasionally, but sometimes often. We've seen some incredible shooters over the past years that have redefined the genre, adding several new mechanics and aesthetics that are now staples of the industry. Although 2021 might not have been the best year for gaming in general, there have been a few shooters that have shined brighter than the rest. I'm good at ranking games, so I'm going to keep this one a little open-ended, you know. This list isn't in any specific order. Why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and we'll be on our way then. Here are my picks for the 10 best first-person shooters of 2021. The Sniper Ghost Warrior franchise is somewhat underrated. Many don't really know how much fun it can get with Contracts 2. The devs pushed out another addition to the franchise that might not be remembered per se, but you will have a good time playing it. If you're familiar with the Sniper series, then you'll know what to expect here. Most of the main concept is the same. Players take the role of an expert sniper assassin who has a series of contracts, just like in the first edition of Contracts. There are a whole bunch of contracts in the Middle East as you maneuver through the neatly designed world to find a perfect hidden spot from where you can take out the enemy targets. There have been overall improvements in visuals and gameplay mechanics. The game might have fallen through the cracks since it doesn't really bring much of a change from its predecessor, but we're still interested in what CI Games has in store next. Fast-paced and action-packed. These were the ingredients chosen to make the perfect little shooter, but the developers accidentally added an extra ingredient to the concoction: sloppy gameplay. Now, if you don't know that reference, then we're probably born in different eras of Cartoon Network. Necromunda Hired Gun has nothing to do with the Powerpuff Girls, and if you think it did, the game is literally called Necromunda. The game is thrilling, fast-paced, and action-packed for sure, and has certainly flown under the radar for many. It's a game that's set within the Warhammer 40,000 series, where you step into the Big Hive City as a ruthless hired gun, taking up contracts and blasting away targets. You'll find a lot of similarities with the Doom series here as well. In this game, you'll be constantly moving, and there are loads of customization options as you level up and upgrade your weapons along with augmentations to further aid you. This isn't by any means the longest game you'll play, but there is still a lot you can do, with side missions and a neat campaign that will get your heart racing.
Ready? Not one for speeches, so how about we just go kill some Rick?
Nice pep talk.
Ah, damn! Here we go!
There have been a whole bunch of zombie shooters over the years, and when talking about co-op zombie shooters, there's only one that comes to mind: Left 4 Dead. Turtle Rock Studios' shooter Back 4 Blood seemingly takes the same approach that the uber-popular zombie shooter had taken in the past, and we must say, it's done a pretty darn good job at it. This game focuses on its cooperative gameplay between a few survivors against hordes of undead zombies. Pretty straightforward then, right? Each level has players completing tasks to get rescued, so it's basically like Left 4 Dead, but with a newer and better coat of paint, and of course, 11 years worth of newly developed gameplay stints and tweaks. There are several zombie types with special attacks, while players have a whole bunch of weapons and attacks to choose from. While there isn't any news of a Left 4 Dead 3, players are still enjoying the legendary co-op shooter franchise even now, but Back 4 Blood could be a good substitute to these games. By no means is this Left 4 Dead 3, but Back 4 Blood feels like a spiritual successor. The game acts like the L4D game with a whole bunch more to do and way more pleasing to the eye. For instance, the game has a new card system where players can unlock cards to add buffs towards their protagonist. This unique card system also applies to the enemies as well, giving them randomly generated buffs, setting up some truly unique gameplay matches. Interesting stuff, this one. Resident Evil Village could have been an incredible game, but sometimes old formulas just don't work in the new world, do they? By no means am I saying that the game's bad. I mean, Village has some of the most memorable characters we've seen this year, and the game is fantastic. But when compared to previous RE titles, Village doesn't really keep up with the high standard the franchise has offered. The survival horror AAA picks up after the events of Resident Evil 7, which means you're still in the role of Ethan Winters, and if I were him, it would be high time that I just stayed home for once. Without spoiling much of the game, Ethan's trying to live a normal life, Settled into a new home in a more remote location, Ethan and his wife Mia are raising their newborn baby daughter Rose, but here's where things get messy. Chris Redfield shows up again and chaos resumes. Now Ethan finds himself in the middle of a remote village where he must track down his kidnapped child. I mean, that sounds terrifying already, doesn't it? There are plenty of puzzles and exploration to do in Village, and all of this horrific stuff is displayed from the first-person point of view. There are multiple bosses to battle and clues to uncover, and that's how this game relates to the series. Overall, the game is great, but many fans might not be too impressed with this newest edition. Battlefield 2042 didn't exactly do well, some even called its launch a complete disaster, but that's without considering the fact that 2042 somewhat still holds up to the franchise's standards. What a lot of people didn't like was the fact that 2042 doesn't have a campaign, which for many is the sole reason to purchase the franchise, and to be honest, that kind of sucks, really. The Battlefields that came before didn't have brilliant campaigns, but they did have brilliantly neat ones that were quite enjoyable to play. 2042 is mainly focused on its multiplayer as that's the only mode available. That's a massive bummer for single-player aficionados. There is a narrative told through multiplayer gameplay which is quite interesting, and the multiplayer's elements on its own are pretty good. The story is based on the devastation from climate change. Satellites have dropped, and it's left a global blackout. Eventually, tensions rise between nations and war breaks out. You know, trademark sort of Battlefield stuff, isn't it? The game might not have done too well on its initial release, but it's safe to say that it's a decent shooter that needs a lot of mending to be recognised as a great game.
Busted! Die! Damn.
Deathloop is fun. It's a refreshing take on a time loop that I think we desperately needed. The team at Arcane Studios, known for quite a few different video games like Dishonored and Prey, brought in another really good title that's probably not as incredible as the previously mentioned titles, but it is definitely a whole lot of fun. This game made it to our list of best games of the year, and if you haven't watched that yet, go ahead and do so. The game's set in a daily time loop where players take the role of either Colt or Juliana, who have different ideologies of the time loop. One is against it, and the other's trying to protect it. Players must take out multiple unique targets across an island, but this isn't going to be an easy task, and if your chapter happens to get killed, you'll be brought back to the start, or if time runs out, the time loop repeats. The concept's super refreshing and interesting to say the least. The game's all about figuring out what you want to do and how you want to do it. In true Arcane Studios fashion, there are several ways you could complete each mission, allowing you the space to seek out your own path. Although the multiplayer aspect is completely optional, it's always fun to play against someone random in a world that's so neatly built.
Light 'em up!
Forged in the fires, we were the tip of the spear.
Continuing the evergreen Call of Duty franchise is their newest installment, Vanguard. I mean, we're already familiar with what the game is all about since COD has been grinding out new titles with the same formula. It's been pleasing fans of the franchise and new players alike. This time around, it's set in the World War II era. Players go through 4 frontiers, so there's a lot for you to do as well as to see. There's a heap of over-the-top action gunplay to enjoy as well. Just like with past installments, there's a multiplayer mode that's going to be quite competitive. In true COD fashion, there's also a zombies mode, so yeah, if you're a fan of the franchise, you'll know exactly what to expect. The Battle Royale Call of Duty Warzone gets some integration as well. If you're not much of a fan of going back to World War II for the game setting, then you'll still have Battlefield 2042 as an alternative until Call of Duty 2022 drops. Severed Steel looks like if Mirror's Edge, Cyberpunk, and Max Payne's Bullet Time tried to get a little naughty one-nighter in. Jokes apart, the game really does have all 3 mashed together. This small indie game is something that you might want to check in on. This is an FPS game where players slow time, like how it is with Bullet Time, set in a bright neon-filled destructive voxel world. Players take the role of Steel, a one-armed sharpshooter, as you gun your way through loads of enemies and seemingly parkour your way through its neatly designed levels. The reloading mechanic was omitted by the devs, so you can expect to swap weapons with the enemies you gun down. After completing the campaign, there are some additional game modes to keep players sticking around. Players can go through challenges based on unscripted and dynamic AI, which should sound fun, and it definitely is. A firefight mode brings out 30 levels with different challenges for players to compete in. The game is something you should definitely try, and is easily one of the best shooters of this year. This one's probably one of the biggest releases of the year. Far Cry 6 is taking players to the Caribbean island of Yara, and in true Far Cry fashion, there's so much for you to do and explore. This is the most expensive Far Cry map to date, and that's nothing short of awesome. So according to the story, players play as Danny Rojas and team up with the resistance in a land that's controlled by El Presidente Anton Castillo, who's a fascist dictator. The objective? To reclaim a peaceful state of Yara once again. The story seems pretty similar to what we've come to know of in the Far Cry series, and it's a formula that's been modified several times for best performance. Many of the characters have been voice acted by veteran actors such as Giancarlo Esposito, who plays Anton Castillo, Jess Salguero as Clara Garcia, and Alex Fernandez as Juan Cortez. With Danny Rojas being a guerrilla fighter, your weapons might be limited, so that means tweaking gear with whatever resources are available, and stealing from Yara's military will probably be your best bet. You can also blend in with citizens, giving you a deeper stealth approach. There's a lot of fun new stuff in Far Cry 6, like holstering your weapons should allow you to pass by guards without bringing any attention. This will allow players to freely explore Yara and allow them the element of surprise when planning an attack.
This isn't happening. I'm going to have to make an emergency landing. Hold on, shit.
Fans of the Halo franchise have been eager to get their hands on Infinite, and since the multiplayer is out as of this recording, we can finally see why the hype train was so long. The Halo franchise has earned legendary status over the years, and Infinite has just about lived up to those massive expectations. Now, we haven't seen much of the single-player campaign quite yet, since the devs haven't revealed too much. What we do know is that the multiplayer mode is very good. The multiplayer mode is free to play. Everyone can jump online and go through the multiplayer gameplay of Halo Infinite, which is a plus, but you'll have to pay for the campaign whenever it comes out. The game will also receive updates, so players should expect new content to be added to the game regularly. The Forge mode is yet to be available, but it won't be too long before we get to see it. This is essentially a level editor for those of you who might not be familiar with the mode. Players can craft up unique levels and settings. The Forge mod isn't a new addition, as we've seen several great custom-made maps over the years in previous games, but it's good this feature added onto Infinite as well. So, which shooters did you like the most? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this list, consider subscribing to Gaming Region and hitting that like button. You've got no idea how much that would help us. As always, see you in the next one.